So we have been treated to yet another amazing finish at the season opener for the Truck Series at Daytona. And guess what? People are just outraged. They don't care about the finish. I mean, the finish was amazing, and the race winner did one hell of a drive. But still, I see a lot of people on social media just saying the finish was terrible, it should be outraged and stuff like that. And to that I say, well, what's the problem? And of course, it didn't take me long to realize what the problem was. And it's the Ben Rhodes one. Now, if you guys don't know anything about Ben Rhodes, you either don't watch the Truck Series, and I know plenty of people watch the Truck Series and they don't even know who Ben Rhodes is. And honestly, I don't blame you. For the most part, Ben Rhodes has been a pretty mediocre driver and largely forgettable in the Truck Series. Most people don't realize that he has been around since 2016. Most people don't realize that he was, before he went to Truck Series full-time since 2016 with ThorSport, most people don't realize that he was actually a driver for JR Motorsports in 2015. He actually drove the 88 car for a select amount of races, and of course nobody remembers that because he did pretty mediocre there. But of course, people are mad because at the finish, not because of the finish, because the finish was great, but because of who won the race, and of course it was Ben Rhodes. And this kinda pisses me off. I'm not gonna lie. Not because I'm a Ben Rhodes fan or anything. Honestly, ever since in the last year, after incidents that left people mad at him, I've kind of lost a bit of respect for Ben Rhodes, actually. So I'm talking this, like, Ben Rhodes is a neutral driver on my list. I used to like him, but now he's a neutral driver on my list. I don't like him as much. But even then, I have to say this. Ben Rhodes is overhated by the fan base. Ben Rhodes is just overhated by the fan base. He doesn't deserve the hate that I think he's getting right now. Especially because most of those incidents happened last year. It's a new season. People need to let it go. Now, of course, I get where it's coming from if you don't like the guy. Because this is not the first time. I mean, back in the incident with the Eckes incident at Texas in 2020, of course, this hasn't been the first time he's gotten into run-ins with other drivers. I think he got into a fight with like Brennan Poole, I believe, back in 2019. He also got into a fight with Tyler DePel at Eldora in 2019. And of course, another Cowboys Motorsports driver last season at Michigan, he also got into Chandler Smith. So, of course, since Ben Rhodes is kind of a Joey Logano, Ricky Stenhouse type of driver, where he is pretty much he pretty much has had a lot of run-ins with other drivers, and that actually, for the fan base, that makes a reputation, that creates a reputation for you of just being a driver that gets into a lot of people, ruffles a lot of feathers, and of course people will feel some type of way. I understand that. But at the same, and of course it doesn't help that he has been largely, like I said, he's been a largely forgettable driver. He is very mediocre. His Truck Series career has been pretty mediocre compared to what his equipment is, because in my opinion, ThorSport Racing is like what, the third best team in the garage behind GMS and Cowboys Motorsports. I'm gonna say that ThorSport is arguably the third best team in the Truck Series, but they're not top tier by any means. You can make an argument for Hattori, you can make an argument for Nias Motorsports being better than ThorSport, though I don't think, after that 2020 season they had, I don't think they qualify as top 3 anymore. But yeah, ThorSport Racing has an argument to be like a top 3 team in the Truck Series. And the fact that Ben Rhodes only has, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 career wins. I mean, it's the same amount of wins that Grant Enfinger had last season. So yeah, Ben Rhodes has been a solid driver, but for the equipment he is actually being given, he's been largely pretty mediocre. which is a pretty, shocking thing to say, kind of, because Ben Rhodes was actually, people forget, Ben Rhodes was actually quite a beast in the K&N Pro Series, now the ARCA Series East and West, but back then it was called the K&N Series. Ben Rhodes was actually a beast. He was a development driver for the now defunct Turner Scott Motorsports. I don't know if he won the K&N East or West title, but I know he won one of those titles, and he was pretty dominant while doing so. So Ben Rhodes has a pretty good track record in the lower divisions, but in the National Series, I mean, he was pretty mediocre in JR Motorsports, pretty mediocre as a third sport driver. But of course, he is far from the worst driver. I don't think when the announcement that Grant Enfinger was going part-time along with, funnily enough, Christian Eckes, people were saying, oh, but what about Ben Rhodes? Ben Rhodes has done, what has Ben Rhodes done? Grant Enfinger scored more wins. Grant Enfinger scored more wins last season than Ben Rhodes did in his entire career. Look, I get that. I get it. Ben Rhodes is far from the best driver at ThorSport, but he is not the worst. Trust me. And of course, I'm just gonna say it right now. People are blinded by the hate from Ben Rhodes. This is just recency bias. Ben Rhodes is getting what I love to call the Stenhouse treatment, where people actually, where a driver actually has a race where he angers a lot of people, and the fan base, of course, gets behind it, because if a driver, you fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, then you know the spill. Stenhouse in the 2018 July Daytona race, he ruffled a lot of feathers, he made a lot of people angry, and that one race basically tarnished his reputation. Even still, to this point, people still call him Ricky Spinghouse or something like that, and it's because of that 2018 July Daytona race that just ruined his reputation. I think the same thing has happened with Ben Rhodes at Texas with the incidents with Christian Eckes, with him just wrecking him intentionally, and the fact that he's been largely irrelevant in the Truck Series, that he hasn't been generating much noise there. I see a lot of people on Twitter funnily ask, who is Ben Rhodes? How long has he been in the series? And it's true, because I don't see a lot of people talking about Ben Rhodes. Like, he's there, but he doesn't make a lot of noise. And when he wins a race, or he just is out there for the win, it's like, oh right, Ben Rhodes exists. But I'm gonna say it right now. When Ben Rhodes performs well, he doesn't get credit, like what happened today at Daytona. I don't care how much you hate Ben Rhodes, you gotta give credit where credit is due. Ben Rhodes made one hell of a drive on that final lap at Daytona. He made the winning pass in the same way that John Hunter Nemechek took the stage win away from him. If you remember in the finish of stage 2, John Hunter Nemechek, he pulled back and then let the other guys, he let somebody else catch up to him, like in that case Johnny Sauter. Johnny Sauter, who is funnily enough Ben Rhodes' teammate, decided to go with Rhodes, and he decided to go with Ben Rhodes, and he pushed John Hunter Nemechek. Of course, Ben Rhodes saw that Nemechek was gaining momentum, and he couldn't block him because they would have crashed. And John Hunter Nemechek ended up winning stage 2. The same thing happened. That's the same thing on the final lap. Ben Rhodes did exactly that same move that John Hunter Nemechek did on him at the end of stage 2. He held back, he received the push from Matt Crafton, and then he went to the outside. Corey Roper, I mean, he took also advantage of the fact that Corey Roper, who was the leader, he was just an inexperienced driver. He or his spotter didn't know what to do. At least good for him for not throwing that late block, because that would have ended in an accident. And with the whole field wrecking behind him, Ben Rhodes wins the race in a very similar fashion to the way that Grant Enfinger won last year, with with Jordan Anderson finishing second. The only difference is that Jordan Anderson came out of nowhere in this race to finish second, so this second place finish isn't as heartbreaking as last year because Jordan Anderson wasn't nowhere to be seen on the final lap, whereas in 2020 he was competing for the win up front. But even then, that's another thing I want to talk about. Jordan Anderson. A lot of people love Jordan Anderson. He's a fan favorite because of his personality. It's hard to hate on Jordan Anderson because personality, he's an underdog. And a lot of people, of course, wanted him and Cody Roper to win because they're from underfunded teams. You got to root for the underdog. Like, I get it. But the same scenario happened last season. Grant Enfinger won in a photo finish over Jordan Anderson, and Cody Rohrbaugh, who is also an underfunded driver, he finished third in that Daytona race last year. And yeah, Grant Enfinger, like a lot of people said, man, he's such a buzzkill to see Enfinger win. Like, there were people that said that. There were people that said that they were kind of mad that Enfinger won because they wanted to see Jordan Anderson win. But this year, Ben Rhodes won, and people are more angry than when they were when Enfinger won last year. And I don't think it's because Jordan Anderson finished second. I don't think it's because people wanted Jordan Anderson or Cody Roper to win. I think people are angry this time is because they hate Ben Rhodes. And it's just nonsense. At this point, the Ben Rhodes hate, in my opinion, is not justifiable. If you're going to, because number one, hate is too strong of a word. It's more like if you dislike Ben Rhodes, then that's fine with me. If you hate him, then you just want him to fail. Hate is too strong of a word, so I don't really encourage the use of. I do not encourage the use of that word, of the H word, as I kind of love to say it. But yeah, if you don't like Ben Rhodes, I get it, but at least give credit where credit is due. Ben Rhodes made one hell of a drive in this race at Daytona. And yeah, that's basically it. Ben Rhodes made a hell of a drive at Daytona. He basically did the same move that cost him the stage win. He pulled off that same move to win the race. And I don't see any people talking about it. Instead, I'm talking people about how they want Ben Rhodes to fail tech inspection because he won the race, and they want to see Jordan Anderson or Cody Roper in this case Jordan Anderson because he finished second. They want to see Jordan Anderson in victory lane. Like, I get it. You're angry that the most unlikable driver didn't win. I know Ben Rhodes isn't very popular by the NASCAR fan base, but again, please give credit where credit is due. It's just one race. There's a long season ahead of you. For all we know, Johnny Sutter could just pull off a Johnny Sutter and just suck for the rest of the season. It's just one race, okay? Let the hate stop. Let the hate boner lay off the hate boners, man. The race is over. Ben Rhodes won. There's nothing you can do about it. Just let it go, man. Let go of the hate.